today to our guest. His name is the Honorable Saah Joseph. He's quite a story. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but just briefly, he was born in Liberia. His father was killed during the Civil War that ravaged the country for over 20 years. Over 15 years. At the age of 12, he left Liberia to go to Sierra Leone, where he lived in a refugee camp for 12 years. Over the next few years, he moved between other neighboring countries, Guinea, Senegal, and then back to Sierra Leone. It's in Senegal where he met my wife, Carrie, and her husband at the time, Doug West. When he was in Sierra Leone, he went back with the intent to find his mother, who was also living in a refugee camp there. In Sierra Leone, he established and planted 30 schools and churches. And then in 2006, he went back to Liberia, and there he's built, to date, 4 other schools. I want you to look at him and realize that he's not even 40 yet. He's accomplished more than many of us do in our whole lifetime. In 2011, he ran for a seat in the Liberian Legislature, and so he's serving in his second year of the 6-year term there. The purpose of his visit today is to educate us about Liberia and about some of the needs that are present that he's aware of. Now, he's already given me a list, I don't have it with me, about 3 pages long, of medical equipment he needs. So that's my challenge. But he'll be also discussing some of the schools and some of the education needs, healthcare needs in the country. I asked Julie Manning if she could be here as a member of this our city, and appreciate very much your attending. I did say that he would be here for a few months, and I apologize. He's actually only be here till early December. So with that said, I would like to pass out. I've got a little brief in case you need a little geography lesson about Liberia, and then I'd like to introduce Saah Joseph. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. This is not my first time visiting a Rotary Club. I remember 2010, I went to Prince George in Canada, and I visited a Rotary Club. There in the Rotary Club, I had a women empowerment program after the war in Liberia. We have a lot of girls who were involved in the prostitution. And I established a training school for girls. And the Rotary Club were able to work along with me. We were able to raise 500 sewing machines that we took to Liberia. And each of those girls were able to get a sewing machine after they graduated from the tailoring school. And today, they are now doing their businesses. And when you mentioned about Shutterbirds, I met Tom Hastings from England. He was also there on the fundraising program. I was there as a speaker as well. But I'm happy to be here today to share with you about my country, Liberia. I was a kid, as Pat really said, when the war came, and I have to go to Guinea. And in Sierra Leone, before going to Guinea, and living by myself for 12 years in a refugee camp was a great challenge for me. And it was very tough because you make decisions for yourself. If you make good decisions, they're going to follow you. And I chose to go to school, and I was in school sponsored by the UNHCR in a refugee camp. And then another war broke up in Sierra Leone. The rebels attacked the refugee camp. I was able to escape again. I went to Guinea. In Guinea, the war broke up again in Guinea. And then I was able to escape. I went to Senegal. But what I realized is that I think God has a purpose for me, taking me through all of those different locations. And then I met the church, the Jefferson Baptist Church from Oregon here in Jefferson, and then we started doing church planting in Sierra Leone, planted 30 churches and 30 schools. And I went back home, started 4 schools. Education is like silver, gold, and diamond for us now, because during the silver crisis, we have children who have never been to school and they begin adult at the age of 20, 25 years. So most of them have never been to school. Even during the crisis, those kids that was used as ex-combatant, now today they are in the 30s. They have never been to school. And it have been tough to make a decision because we're still facing, the war is over, the physical war is over. We have taken arms away from those children and from the rebels, but we still have a warfare within us where they need, those little children coming up need to go to school. Those guys who fight the war need to have a skill so that they can be able to acquire a job. And I was able to establish 4 schools. 4 schools, those schools are the only schools now in Liberia, especially the Massarado County, that provide registration free and school fee free. We were also doing a feeding program at the school, but unfortunately, because of the crisis, I told my friends in the house that if America prosper, Liberia will prosper. And then they say, what do you mean by that? And I made a statement when we had, when Liberia discovered oil, and there was some discussion on who should take the oil, who we should give the oil block to. We had China, we had Russia, and then the Chevron was also going. And in our discussion, I said, I would prefer giving the oil to America. And then they said, well, I should give reason. I said, how many non-profit from Russia are in Liberia? We counted none. How many non-profit from China in Liberia? None. 95% of all non-profit in Liberia are from the United States. And I am the co-chairman on planning and economic affairs that have direct oversight responsibility over all international and national non-profit. And I showed them the listing. And that's how we got Chevron take the oil, block the thing. And when the economy of the country went down in the U.S. here, all of the support that we have been facing, all of the support I received to build the 30 schools, build the churches, all came from the United States here. So when things came down, we couldn't continue feeding. And now we are struggling on the schools to make sure that children go to school. Our schools are Christian schools. We teach them Christian principles because we feel that when they come up in that manner, we believe they can make a great change for our nation. And I think, and again, this morning around 4 o'clock, I printed a listing and then I turned it over to Pat concerning the medical situation in Liberia is very, very bad. And people are struggling because they can't even afford the money to go to hospitals. We have private clinics, but the government facilities are not equipped at all. Nothing is there. We have the biggest facility that we have, the John F. Kennedy Hospital, that was built by President John Kennedy from the United States. And there is nothing in it. Yeah, nothing. And if you see the listing, they themselves are called back home and I told them to give me the list, and that's how they submitted the listing. All of our major cases, in case of surgery and what have you, we have to go to a neighboring country. But if you don't have the money, you're going to sit there and then you die. So that have been one of the biggest struggles as well, to make sure that we'll be able to. So I'm here also talking to people in the United States to see, look at our health need, basically equipment, and also equipment that not just it don't have to be brand new, but whatever that you can use. Trust me, we can make it. We can make use of it in Liberia. So we're also hoping to have a computer school program for the some of our youth that coming up. We want to open a computer school for our schools. So we're looking out for opportunity for that. And also one of the greater challenge, as I told you earlier, is the school. Uh, the schools run free of charge, registration free, school fee free, and I'm engaging government to see how best they can help us to be able to support some of the schools. But the challenges for government are very, very high in that level. So we're doing all we can to make sure that children will have the opportunity. In the school I'm telling you about, when I started first, we had 100 students in the classroom. And I said, well, we need to improve. You can't keep 100 students to one teacher. So we cut down the number to 75. And then we said, okay, let's try to improve again. We came down to 50 students in the classroom. But we have about 80,000 children where I represent 250,000 persons. And we have about 8,000 children who are not in school. Yeah, and we need to get them in school. That's why we have the schools running and what have you. I think the challenges are very hard in terms of education. And I told member of the House that we need to bring permanent peace to Liberia. What do I mean by bringing a permanent peace to Liberia? Those that fought the war, the kids that was used to fight, need to get some skills, need to get some basic education so that they can be able to found the ends meet, so they can survive. Other than that, today in Liberia, if you have $10,000, you can start a war. Because you can give them that money, they can do anything. So the great one of it is but we want to open as combatant program. We were successful with the girls by training young girls, giving them skills, not just the skill, we give them machines. Most of them are doing business. In fact, if you come and register, we just provide free school, but the parents would tell them to get uniform. And you go to some of those girls, they do the uniform for you. And then you give them something. So that have been going very well. So if these guys also have a skill by training them, we want to train them carpentry and masonry so that they can be able to get a skills where we can get tools for them, and then they can now go and become builders and what have you. They can be able to get jobs from there. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to serve in that. And that will bring a permanent peace to Liberia. I was just talking to the major just now and said we want a sister-city relationship. And I just received a card. It's something that we're going to push so we can get that relationship. But I would also love to also invite you to our country, Liberia. It's a nice country. We have a long history with the United States. We have the same pledge. It's a pledge allegiance to the flag of the Liberia and to the Republic of which it stands. It's everything just the same. Yeah. And this is the only country in Africa that uses the US dollar as a currency. We have a very good relationship. So all of our help, everything that we depend on come from here. So we want to get a relationship with the city here. And I'm happy that the major is here. And I would also like to send an invitation to the Rotary here and to the major to please pay a visit to us, and then so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I don't just want to come and talk, but you can come and see exactly, see some of those kids and what have you. But when I took over as representative, my role have been how can I make a change? Because I feel that I was not elected based on education because I'm just a high school graduate. And I was not also elected based on I have money, no. But God make it possible for a purpose for me. And I'm the chairman on banking and currency. I'm the co-chair on planning and economic affairs. I'm also a member of the committee on health. So I've been working very hard to see how best we can be able to fight very hard to get things moving. And one of the situations that took place was the adoption. A lot of kids from Liberia was adopted, especially in Oregon area, and Liberian kids. And the adoption was shut down by the government. But then I was not involved, and I said, when I got elected, whenever I come in the government, the first thing I will be doing is to make sure to reintroduce the adoption law. And when I took over office, the first bill that I introduced was the adoption law. And in the old adoption law, if you are American, you want to adopt a child, they want you to go to Liberia to stay there for 1 year. Wow. And when I was working on the bill, I told them 2 weeks. Yeah. So the bill was successfully passed. Now adoption is on. Yeah. So I was able to reintroduce the bill, and then it's not taking place. But the challenges I had for our country in terms of health and education, and this trip have been, wonderful sharing. When I was in California, the Farmers Association donated 1 container of rice, which is 144 container of rice. So Christmas, we want to look at old folks, orphanage home, and in our schools, and distribute our rice to them. And one of our challenges now is to make sure to send the container back. But if there's any opportunity for businesses, companies, we want that relationship, so we can work together at that level. Thank you so much.
So I wanted to just also say if there's anything he had said that you didn't quite understand, you now need to understand some of the, accent words. So, but the other thing I wanted to say is that regarding that Liberia adoption law, I work with a gentleman in my office who has 2 children from Liberia, and afterwards we're going to go see him. But he was certainly a benefactor of that legislation change. So we want to give enough time for folks to ask questions.
Yep.
I just wondered how healthcare and education are funded in Liberia. You mentioned that the large hospital is really not equipped, and so how is healthcare funded now?
We have assistance coming through UNICEF and some other medical teams that come. But the major challenge that we have is that to get equipment there. Like I spoke to many doctors when I came on the trip, people waiting to give up the time, but we don't have the equipment.
So
we don't have even an oxygen machine in the biggest hospital.
So citizens of Liberia don't pay taxes to the government to help fund healthcare and education. I mean, I'm trying to understand.
We are struggling on $1 a day to survive. And if you tell somebody to pay taxes, like you're telling them to run away. So
I'll jump in here real quick, and I'll get up here soon. Some of the healthcare is provided actually by large corporations. Firestone, Rubber and Tire, they collect the rubber in the country and then ship the raw goods back. But they have huge compounds around their plants, and they have very fully equipped hospitals. So they're sort of like a benefactor in some ways to some of the country. But the country itself, I think what she's asking is, do the citizens pay? If not, then how does that?
It's difficult.
How do the school teachers get paid?
It's all schools in Liberia are private schools. You have few government schools, which even you have to pay something to attend the government school. So education is not free, and the educational program is not controlled by the government because the government don't have the resources to control the educational program. So basically, everything is is private. So you only charitable organizations those are open to kids that say, okay, come to school free, especially kids that cannot afford.
Okay, thank you.
So it's kind of along the same lines. Sometimes with the discovery of oil, it's called the resource curse. Like in Nigeria, they have all the oil, but the per capita income has gone down. So with the oil, can any of that money be moved into education and healthcare?
Well, we just discovered oil about a year ago, and when you just discover the oil, and then tomorrow you start working on the oil, and they told us, no, we're not going to get access to the oil until maybe 10 years.
Really?
We saw is that way talking. So there are still a lot of jobs to do.
Okay.
But what we know is that we want to learn from other countries like Nigeria where it have been a cause. So this is why we're making sure to give our oil to a country that we trust, people that we know that have been in a relationship with for a very long time, and they can rescue us. And this is why we work with Chevron from the United States to make sure we give them the oil so that we will not experience the situation that is in Nigeria.
One more question.
What are your natural resources in the country?
Our natural resources are iron ore and rubber. These are our natural resources.
Do you have any farming area that can be
We have
developed?
the land. In fact, the Farmers Association in California decided one person will be going to go visit Liberia in June. Our challenge is the equipment because everything that we do there is with our hands. So one of the great challenges is to get equipment so that we can be able to do some farming there.
Do you have animals like cattle and horses?
Yes, we do.
You could use them to farm if you had the equipment.
No, we don't have houses, but we have the cattle like sheep and goats, but we eat them. So
Right.
Yeah.
But you need to know how to raise more so you can eat more.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you, Jeff, for you. So we greatly appreciate you being here. Pat, thank you for great speech.